What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I have a treat for you guys today. I'm going to be going over the 5 things you need to do in order to succeed and win in remote sales, whether you're a setter, closer, and yeah, so let's go ahead and hop straight into it. So first off, we're going to go over number 1, which is listening. So what I mean by listening is you're going to be hopping on these calls as a setter and closing calls as a closer, and you're going to be talking to leads. You're going to be talking to prospects, trying to change their lives and helping them better themselves to get them across the line to hopefully close them, to help them change their lives, whether they're investing in like a fitness program, a financial way to actually make money, whatever it is. Like, you're going to be talking to people. So first off, you're going to need to learn how to actively listen and understand what someone is actually going through. Because if you're just hopping on these calls and you're being robotic and you're just like, okay, so I'm keep reading the script, hopefully he answers a question this way so I can go off this script. And that's just not how you want to do it. You just want to have a genuine one-on-one conversation and actually understand where they're coming from, so that way you can help them the best way possible and you can actively be present on the call. Because when you're listening and you're actually trying to understand them and be genuinely present in the moment as best as you can, the more possible it is for you to close them, if they're even closable. Because let's just say they don't have any pains, or maybe they don't have enough money, or they just aren't a good fit for whatever you're selling. I mean, if you're actually listening, you can tell and just DQ them and get off the call. But if you're actually listening, you genuinely care and you want them to have the best life, like you want to help them as best as you can, then you'll have that genuine close, like, oh man, well this program is actually perfect for you. Like, because you know and you've listened to them enough to know that whatever you're selling will actually be able to change their lives. And you have such high conviction that they can feel that energy that you're giving to them, that conviction that you have will transfer over to them, and it'll be a very easy sell or set. So that's number 1, just active listening and being present, not being robotic, and putting yourself also out of the equation of like the commission that you'll get from either the set close or the close. Because the more you transfer your selfishness out of the picture about your commission you'll be getting from the call and focus more on the prospect's point of view and putting yourselves in their shoes, the easier it is and the more enjoyable and fulfilling it is as a closer or a setter. So that's number 1. Now we'll go ahead and move on to number 2, which is communication. So with communication, I think I spelled that right. I did drop out of university a few years ago, but with communication, there's a few things we'll be going over with that. So your tonality is very important. That was my main weakness when I first got into remote sales, is I had such a monotone voice that people were definitely bored talking to me, listening to me. And you just need to be able to fluctuate your voice whenever you're talking to people, whenever you're asking questions, making sure you end the question with a down tone and then ending your question with an uptone, and then whatever statements you're making, whenever you're pitching, whenever you're making any type of statement, making sure you end a down tone, so that way you kind of frame yourself higher on the call. Because the more professional you sound, the more trust you gain, and the more you're able to articulate what you're trying to say and what the program, product, service even is about. Because if you're monotone, if you're just a flatline type of person when you're speaking, people are just going to hear everything the exact same. So you want to be able to make the things that you're talking about, like excite the selling points. So whatever the selling points are in the product, service, mentorship, whatever you're selling, making sure that you excite the points like it's a lifetime guarantee. So whatever is like the main points that you need to get across to the prospect, make sure your tonality reflects that. And with the communication as well, being able to talk very slow, not to a point where you sound like a turtle, but to the point where you're able to put your points across, and so that your prospects are fully able to digest what you're actually trying to say to them. Because especially when objections come up, a lot of the time I saw myself in the past just speed up just because I got a little bit nervous that objections came up. But you want to be able to just slow down, especially when these objections come up, so that way you can articulate your thoughts and put across the best way to handle those objections, so that way you can either get the set, the close, and you're able to make some money for yourself. And with communication as well, the best way I found to work on this and to improve this greatly for myself, this was definitely the best way, is grabbing any book that you like. I read these books over there, Psycho-Cybernetics, 48 Laws of Seduction, whatever book you have, just read at least 10 pages a day out loud and record yourself. So when you're doing that, not only are you practicing speaking out loud and practicing your tonality, you're making sure that you're speaking slow, you're speaking with confidence, conviction, and that you're making any tweaks and you're being very self-aware of the words coming out of your mouth. Because when you're speaking, a lot of the time, most people, especially for myself a few years ago, I didn't give a fuck about what I said or how I said it. I just said whatever was on my mind and didn't really care. But the more you're able to master your communication, articulation of your words, your thoughts, and able to speak what your mind is thinking in sync, the more you're able to do that, the more money you'll be able to make, especially with remote sales. Now, with these two things covered, I think we've covered mostly everything we need to for these two. We'll move on to the third one, which is objections. So objections, I mean, they're inevitable in the sales world, whether it be remote or in person. So to combat objections, you need to think of the objections as not even real. So what I mean by that is, as you guys know, like in this reality, the more you think about something, the more it's able to come up in your life. Like whatever you think about is what happens most of the time. So of course, this is still reality. Like it's not just all objections are gonna magically disappear. But the more you're able to just think less about objections and like stop, I'm not saying don't train for objections, but just kind of put them out of the picture and be like, oh, objections don't even exist. Everyone buys. Everyone's willing to just pay immediately. And just put your frame of mind in that retrospect, then you're able to bypass a lot more objections than you might think you actually get. Because the thing is, I didn't even get that many objections until I even heard about objection handling. I'm like, oh shit, I got to start preparing for these objections when they start coming up. And then they started coming up a lot more often than they had before. But I mean, with that being said, with objections, if you do get them, of course you just want to be able to know how to manage them, because I mean, the main objections that do come up, if they do, are the time objections, money objection, decision maker objections, and trust objection. There's a few more, but those are like the main ones. And you just need to figure out like why those objections come up in the first place, so that way you can figure out like what's the real issue. Because with objections, the main reason they come up is because of some smoke screen they're hiding behind the real reason they don't want to buy in the first place. So with the objections, you just got to navigate through that smoke screen and figure out and ask a certain line of questions to figure out like what's the real problem, like what's the real reason they don't want to buy right now. And the more able you are to actually dig around and navigate through that, and Aikido your way through that objection to find out what the real cause is, then you can have a real, genuine conversation around like, okay, well, that reason isn't really a good reason. Like, and kind of just see and talk with them and see like what's really holding them back. Is it like a limiting belief? Is it the person they are now not able to become the person they need to be in order to change their lives? Is money really just holding them back, like they really are just broke and they need to work out some financing option? Do they really need to talk to their wives, or are they just not in the right frame of mind to make a decision for themselves? I mean, there's so many different things you need to figure out to be able to navigate through these objections, so that way you can make them obsolete and get that money in the door and get that close as soon as possible. Now we'll go ahead and move on to number 4, which is routine. Now, with routine, it means quite a few different things. So with the routine, that means like a pre-call routine, the routines you're setting up in your daily lives, the routine and how you actually go through your calls, and just making things a little bit more organized and structured and systemized, so that way you're not just going through everything randomized, and you'll have some type of structure when you're going from point A to point B, whether it be from waking up and going to sleep, hopping on a sales call and getting the close, or whatever it may be, going to the gym, hitting a certain type of workout, getting protein in, whatever it may be, just getting in some type of routine. So that way you know what doesn't work, what does work. So that way whatever doesn't work, you can go in, tweak whatever that is, and make everything perfect from point A to point B. So when setting up your routine, especially for sales calls, you want to make some type of pre-call checklist to make sure you're in the highest frequency state possible. Now, what I mean by this is sometimes when I was working from 10 p.m. until 4 to 5 a.m., I was, of course, a little bit sleepy. It was nighttime, the stars were out, my girlfriend was here, I was cuddling, being nice and cozy. But when I'm hopping on these sales calls, I want to make sure that I'm in the highest frequency and energy state possible. So before I hopped on sales calls, I would make sure to get in at least 10 to 15 burpees in, as well as drinking a nice big glass of water, and if needed, taking a cold shower just to wake my body up and get the blood pumping, get the oxygen to the brain, and making sure that I wasn't hopping on these calls looking like an absolute zombie. Now, of course, this doesn't have to be you, because maybe you're in the United States right now, maybe you're already in a very good place where you're able to be in a high frequency state, but just making sure you have some type of routine, whether it be before your sales calls, right when you wake up, so that way you get the day started, you get the frequency state to the max, and you're able to be able to see like what works, what doesn't work, so that way whatever doesn't work, you're able to find out that very quickly, and you're able to change that, so that way your routine will be it'll be able to tweak and fix, so that way you're able to maximize your productivity and maximize your frequency throughout your life and throughout your days, so that way you can consistently move the needle forward day in and day out. And then last but not least, hopefully you guys can see this, growth. So growth, you might be curious, like what does that even mean? Like that's such a broad term. What growth means actually, if you want to be able to win in remote sales, is you want to always be growing mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially, of course. So what growth means is you always want to be speaking your truth and doing what you're talking about on these sales calls, because when you're motivating and inspiring and changing these people's lives on these sales calls, you won't be able to do so if you're not changing yourself. And if you aren't growing yourself, how do you expect to help other people grow? So you need to be going to the gym, you need to be eating good, you need to be cutting out the bullshit, the alcohol, the weed, the nicotine, the vices, whatever it may be, just cutting all the bullshit out. So that way you're cutting the weeds and you're able to grow as a very firm, strong tree, and you're able to branch out and help other people do the exact same thing. So with growth, just being able to consistently level up your mindset, level up your knowledge in the world, reading books, watching people and learning, investing in courses, mentorships, just bettering yourself in any and every way possible, the more money you'll be able to make, because you're just bettering yourself as a person and you're becoming the future version of yourself that's able to actually build out your dream life. Because the person I am now is so much different than the person I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was just smoking weed, drinking alcohol, going to parties, just living the degenerate lifestyle, and I wasn't growing. I was dying, I was declining, I was destroying my brain, my body, my spirit, and I was going down a very slippery slope. So once you're able to reframe that and change that part of your life, cut out the bullshit, cut out the vices, and you start focusing on growth for yourself, especially in the sales world, you'll be able to exponentially grow your income just because that's who you are as a person. So the more you're able to grow, the more you're able to level up, everything else in your life will level up. Your relationships, your money, your freedom, everything will level up. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand from experience. I went from a broke bum back in the United States to being able to go wherever I want, whenever I want, and make how much money I want to make, just because I was able to focus on the right things in life and cutting out the bullshit. So hopefully you guys got some value from this video. Those are the 5 things you need to do in order to level up in remote sales. But of course, quick disclaimer, if you guys aren't on a gold mine of an offer quite yet, these 5 things will help you, especially growth, but you want to be able to find that gold mine of an offer, because in the remote sales space, I mean, it doesn't really matter how good your sales skills are. I mean, of course, it does help, but it really determines on like what type of offer you're on. That determines how much money you'll make. So if you can find a gold mine of an offer, I mean, if you're the worst salesman in the world, you're going to be making a lot more, like tons more, than the best salesman in the world on the worst offer. So keep that in mind as you guys watch the end of this video. But if you guys have any questions, put them down in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.